Batman with prep time is kind of a cheat code. It's often joked about amongst comic book fans that Batman with prep time can essentially defeat anyone. But what if he didn't have prep time? And what if the people he was going into battle against were other versions of Batman? And that's why today we're talking Batman versus Batman Battle Royale. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, Batman vs. Batman Battle Royale style. We have 4 versions of animated Batman. And in this scenario, there is going to be no prep time. There are going to be no vehicles allowed, which means Batman Brave and the Bold Batman does not get his very cheap, overpowered Batmobile that literally can turn into anything. I'm pretty sure there's an episode or two where it turns into a robot. So in this scenario, these different versions of Batman are presumably going to just stumble upon each other, and they are all going to be locked within a room to do battle with one another, only being able to leave once they are victorious. So I'm going to run down the list to tell you which one gets eliminated first, all the way down to the last Batman standing, and he will be our victor. As we've done versus battles in the past, we will use the same rules, so I will only take into account the different feats that these characters have within the confines of their movies and or TV shows. We will not take into account any type of tie-in comics, and I will also not be measuring their FTL plus speed and their mountain level durability, nothing like that. It is going to solely be based upon how they performed against their different enemies, their different strategies they came up with, and how they performed within each battles. So, first and foremost, as you can tell, we have 4 versions of Batman. We have DCAMU Batman, DCAU Batman, the Batman 2004 Batman, and Batman Brave and the Bold Batman. So these 4 iterations of Batman are going to be squaring off in this battle royale. So without further ado, let's get right into it, because coming in at last on the list, the first Batman to exit this battle royale is going to be controversial, and it is DCAMU Batman exiting first. Now, before you freak out, I know how amazing his martial arts are. I know how amazing his fight choreography is throughout every single movie he appears in. However, this Batman has a fatal flaw, and that fatal flaw doesn't really affect the other versions of Batman. And that fatal flaw is the New 52 universe in the DCAMU was, in my opinion, designed to be as real world as we could get. And by that, I mean this version of Batman tried to be as grounded as possible, and to me is very similar to a Robert Pattinson or even a Christian Bale. Yes, there are still elements of the fantastical as it is animation, so you do have more freedoms. However, this is definitely a more grounded version of Batman with way more limitations. We see this in the second Justice League movie. He essentially does nothing in the final battle against Atlantis except for go to Cyborg to project the message. So although this is a high IQ feat, it doesn't give him any type of amazing combat in that moment. Now, if we're talking amazing combat, yes, his scene against all those resurrected Talons was absolutely awesome, even though he did theoretically have the help of Nightwing, and as they started to get overwhelmed, he did have to use his suit of armor, which in this scenario, he would not have. Additionally, he would not have home field advantage. So we really can only take into account his battle against the 3 Talons towards the beginning of the movie. And honestly, he kind of gets his ass kicked. Yes, I know this was his first experience battling against the Talons, not knowing the full capabilities of what they can do and the fact that they literally cannot die. However, that being said, he doesn't adapt very well or very quickly. He is able to take them out eventually. However, by that point, he is literally skewered through the abdomen and I believe even through one of the sides of his chest. So he is very much so immobilized by this point by the end of the battle. Now, one of his other very impressive feats throughout the movies is going up against Deathstroke, and not only going up against him, he literally kicks his ass pass in less than 2 minutes. That is how quick the fight is, and that is also why the final battle isn't Batman versus Deathstroke, it is Robin versus Deathstroke, because then we have actual stakes. If it was Batman versus Deathstroke, as we saw in that first battle, Batman no-diffed him to the point where he didn't even break a sweat, and truly, it was over in under 2 minutes. I think the actual count is like 1 minute and 8 seconds. It is an absolutely insane feat. However, when we start to get into the more fantastical elements of this version of Batman, that is where he starts to fall off. He has 2 battles against Superman in this universe, and in both of them, he gets dominated pretty easily. And in both of those scenarios, it ends with him being held by the neck. And it makes it even worse when you consider that in one of those scenarios, he has brass knuckles made of kryptonite. And while having the upper hand, he decides to let them go and leave them in the sewer, making his battle IQ that was so high from earlier moments that I mentioned in this video now has to be dropped back down. Because there is no feasible excuse for you, when you are battling a Kryptonian, to let go of literal kryptonite. The only thing that is keeping you in this fight. And if not for Catwoman dropping Lois Lane off of a building, Batman probably would have gotten his neck snapped. And let's not forget, he did go up against Doomsday, kind of. I mean, it was literally him just dodging Doomsday over and over again. And when we do finally cut back to him, he literally has his arm ripped out of its socket, and it's just kind of hanging there. He is covered in blood, so I won't give him too many points for that fight either. But it is because of all these reasons that I do have him exiting first. I just feel like when it does come to battle IQ and adapting on the spot, not to mention dealing with elements of the fantastical, he definitely has the least amount of feats. And I know he has that moment where he throws a sword through Darkseid's eye and it ends up blowing up part of his head, messes with his Omega beams. However, that sword was made from kryptonite, and it was more of a surprise feat from Batman, as Darkseid was not sure whose side Batman was on. And Batman in this moment has the chance to solidify himself on the same level of these other versions of Batman when Darkseid does use his Omega beams against Batman. However, this version of Batman does not dodge the Omega beams. Instead, Robin has to jump in between Batman and the Omega beam and takes the brunt of the attack. So I can't give him that much credit for this moment. However, I will dock points because I do not believe this version of Batman could have dodged the Omega beams like the other versions of Batman have done in the past in other iterations. So this Batman is out first. But coming in next on the list, we have Batman Brave and the Bold Batman. Yes, he is going to be exiting second on this list. He will be out. Now, I know what you were thinking. This Batman has done some crazy things, and yes, you're right. However, a lot of those crazy things end up happening later in the episode after this version of Batman has had ample time to prep. This version of Batman thrives on prep time. He is able to prep better than any other version of Batman on this list, probably. And considering he does not have his Batmobile, which literally can turn into multiple different mechs, multiple different ships, a spaceship at one point, he is going to be highly limited in this battle. And I know some of his really impressive feats are crazy, like when he is able to wield a Green Lantern ring just because of how much sheer willpower he has. Well, it's not a Green Lantern ring, it's 3 of the Green Lanterns imbuing him with their power. Thus, he's able to focus that power into concentrated willpower. Technically, Batman gets a Green Lantern ring, but also technically doesn't. However, I can't use that as a feat here other than to measure how much willpower he has, because he is not going to be imbued with the powers of Green Lantern rings in this battle. So aside from that, his probably most impressive feat is going up against Darkseid, being able to goat him into a fight. However, it is during this fight that he is able to somewhat dodge Darkseid's Omega beams. And I say somewhat because yes, he is able to dodge them in a way. However, this version is definitely the most cartoony and goofy version of Batman that we do get. So in this moment where Batman is quote unquote dodging the Omega beams are looking around as if they're playing hide and seek with Batman. This is not how the Omega beams operate. They lock onto their target, and even if you are behind something, they know where you are. So this is definitely just something that the show did as a funny moment to show how campy this version of Batman is. So I'm not going to fully give him the credit for dodging the Omega beams because he literally just hides behind a rock and they circle around for a little bit and then he jumps over another rock and they blast into it and he still gets blasted away and kind of harmed. So I can't really give him this incredible feat, which is awesome by the way, dodging the Omega beams, because he was only able to do it because of how campy this universe is. So that's why I definitely have to take points away there. However, he is able to go up against multiple enemies throughout this series. When he does meet the other version of the Justice League, he is able to go toe to toe with multiple versions of them. And not only that, there is a moment in which Batman is gone and the other heroes have to pick up the slack for Batman. And all of these great heroes are starting to realize how much Batman truly does in a day and how much Gotham relies on him. So this is something that I will give him bonus points for, because all of these amazing heroes are struggling to deal with multiple things that Batman is able to solve in practically one day. And another thing that I am going to slightly knock off some IQ points for this version of Batman will be in the movie where he crossed over with the Scooby-Doo gang and there was literally a case that he could not solve and these teenagers came in their van and they were able to solve it. Well, kind of. So although I do understand that they had to do this for plot reasons, it does still make sense in the campy universe that it does exist in. And as I mentioned earlier, in that battle against Darkseid, his whole plan made realistically no sense, as by the end you find out the Question was the one who ended up messing with Darkseid's technology during the fight Batman was having with Darkseid that ended up in all of Darkseid's forces being sucked back into Apocalypse. However, Batman did not come up with this plan. Batman didn't know what was going on. And you could see his conversation and interaction with the Question afterwards, where he is asking about what the Question did. And he seems somewhat perplexed by the whole situation. So although Batman does have some pretty crazy feats in this series, he goes up against some extremely strong enemies. However, I feel like against a lot of those enemies, in his first battle, he ends up losing. He doesn't show the ability to come up with plans once his initial plans fail, not until he's had more time to assess the situation. So that's why I feel like if this is a true battle royale situation where they are all trapped in this room together, or even trapped in this space together, maybe they do have space to move about pretty freely, they are not going to be able to sit and strategize for very long. So quick thinking is going to be key, and that is where I feel like this version of Batman is going to fall flat. Now, if he could have prep time and or his Batmobile, I do think this version of Batman probably would end up taking this fight. But we already set the parameters before the fight, so Batman Brave and the Bold Batman is out second. That leaves us with two versions of Batman. So who's going to be left standing and who's going to be the next exit out? Well, it's going to be the '04 version of the Batman. Now, before you go crazy on me, before you call me a DCAU Glazer, which I am, please let me explain. Because I feel like a lot of the flaws that exist with this Batman are a lot of the flaws that I listed for Batman Brave and the Bold Batman. Don't get me wrong, this version of Batman has crazy feats. At one time, he quite literally wields a Green Lantern ring. And not just any Green Lantern ring, but one that belongs to Hal Jordan. Now, is this a crazy feat? Yes. However, he also had permission from the ring's true wearer to wear the ring. So that's why, similarly to how Batman Brave and the Bold Batman didn't get that much credit for using the power, I can't give that much credit to this version of Batman because he did not properly earn the ring. He was given permission to wield the ring by the ring's true bearer, and that was Hal Jordan. And this was stated earlier on in the episode and also later on in the episode. So I can't give him a ton of credit there. Another thing with this version of Batman, he does defeat Dracula. And that's something I have mentioned on this channel before. Him going toe-to-toe with Count Dracula and ultimately defeating him was awesome. However, we also have to look at how he defeated him. Yes, he was able to come up with a strategy to cure all of Dracula's victims. He was able to go up against all of Dracula's minions without getting bit, so that is an incredible feat, and that is why I have him scaled above specifically DCAMU Batman, as Batman struggled with 3 versions of the Talons, whereas this version of Batman was going up against 20 to 30 different versions of vampire citizens citizens. And yes, we don't know how strong these citizens were. However, it is implied that they do have enhanced speed, enhanced strength throughout different events in this movie. So considering all that, Batman going up against all of them at once definitely is a crazy feat. Now, I am more so talking about in the beginning when he goes against multiple of these vampires. As the fight later on, I will more so attribute to his ability to prep properly, as during that fight he is mainly just dodging them and injecting the cure into them over and over again. And that's why, although he does defeat Dracula, I can't give him credit for the stakes of this battle, because this battle is no prep time and he was only able to defeat Dracula with ample prep time, with the help of Alfred, and with luring Dracula back to the Batcave to use the literal sun machine that Wayne Enterprises just so happened to design in that movie. So while him defeating Dracula is incredibly impressive, I can't use it to scale him that high. However, even that being said, he does have some pretty crazy other feats, especially because in this universe, every single villain knows martial arts. The Penguin, the Joker, even the Riddler is out here throwing absolute hands. And this version of Batman routinely defeats these villains. Now, it is true for some of these villains, he is not able to defeat them right away, and that's why I can't give him too many points for defeating all of these crazy enemies, because a lot of the times he does have a battle with them, and that battle either ends in a draw or it ends with Batman losing in some way, only to come back stronger later on after some prep time and some good strategy to inevitably defeat the enemy. However, that being said, he is still able to go toe-to-toe with multiple of these enemies, like the Penguin, like the Joker, like the Riddler, on his first attempt battling them, and he is able to defeat them. And he was able to go toe-to-toe with Dracula, at least for a time. Even though he was defeated, it is still a crazy feat, and him going up against all of those vampires is also an absolutely crazy feat. Not to mention, he did go up against Superman, and while this did technically take some prep time, as he did have to get that suit ready, I am still giving him a little bit of points for that, although he doesn't get a ton because, again, he does not get prep time in this fight. So, all that being said, this version of Batman will be exiting third. So, the last Batman standing will be Kevin Conroy's Batman. DCAU Batman is the last Batman standing. Now, let me explain why that is. First and foremost, he manages to dodge Omega beams from Darkseid. And this isn't a campy moment from a cartoon, similarly to the Batman Brave and the Bold moment. No, he quite literally dodges Darkseid's actual Omega beams. Something that we are shown in that series absolutely kills people. They lock onto their target and eviscerate essentially anything they touch, not named Superman. So that right there gives him a crazy feat. And not only that, multiple times he puts his team in position to claim victory. He is the person coming up with all the different strategies. He is the person going up against Amazo and leaving Amazo on the ground at the end of the fight. Yes, I know he took out Kryptonite, but guess what? This is a version of Batman smart enough to always have Kryptonite on his person. And not only that, he is someone that when he learned about Kryptonite, he decided to do a ton of research on Kryptonite. He decided to want to learn not only what it could do to Superman, but what it could do to him. And that proved how intelligent this character is. And time again, he outsmarts, quite literally, one of the smartest characters in DC. And one of the top 2 smartest characters in the DCAU. That character being Lex Luthor. If you want to know more about that subject though, check out my other video here. I posted it on Monday, but essentially it just goes over multiple instances where Batman uses his smarts and intelligence to outsmart Lex Luthor. And this version of Batman not only outsmarts Lex Luthor time and time again, but anytime he does lose the upper hand in any battle, he is able to bounce back so quickly to the point where the time he was captured by the Injustice Gang, he quite literally devised a strategy essentially right away to start pitting all these people against each other, create more divides, and then manipulate one of them to be a scapegoat while the other one is Batman's real inside person. This Batman also has a ton of really crazy feats, one of which is a durability feat where he is able to take a full charge from Superman and gets blasted back into a wall. Now, was this a full strength Superman? No, probably not. It was just Superman trying to knock him away. However, still, it is still the Man of Steel, someone who has the power of a locomotive, smashing straight into you at super speed and knocking you into a wall. And Batman is able to just get up unscathed, which is a pretty impressive feat in of itself. And not only that, we also see him go up against multiple Thanagarian soldiers, which Thanagarians are pretty strong, and he is able to dispatch them pretty handedly multiple times throughout the episodes. Not to mention him battling against the undead forces on Themyscira when Hades is attempting to return, him battling against the likes of Morgan Le Fay. Yes, he is not victorious, however, he does still survive this battle, and he is still able to survive the attack that she does hit him with. So with all of that considered, I do agree that this version of Batman may not have the greatest feats of physical strength. However, he has hands down the best examples of how to use his wit to win battles. And that's why I truly believe throughout the course of this battle royale, his wit would far surpass any ideas and strategy all the other versions of Batman would be able to come up with, leading to his inevitable victory in this fight. This Batman has quite literally the highest level of IQ amongst any of the Batman versions that we have here. The only version of Batman that I truly believe could go toe to toe with this version of Batman, aside from in the comics, would be Batman from the Arkham games. There are two reasons why I didn't include that version of Batman. One reason being it is really hard to scale him as we are playing as that version of Batman. So to give him credit for feats is really difficult. And not only that, even the strategies he uses throughout the game are really hard to scale because he is not the one always acting upon those strategies. A lot of the time it is us as the player. So I would more so be judging how good of a player we are versus how skilled that version of Batman is. However, if you want me to add in that version of Batman to some hypothetical battle in the future, just let me know. I will definitely try my best. But with that, this battle royale is finished. And the winner is DCAU Batman. But I'm interested to know what all of you think. Do you agree with my exit order? Or do you think someone else wins this battle entirely? Let me know in the comments below. And not only that, if you want to see other versus battles, please give me suggestions. I would absolutely love to hear them. I already know I have one for 4 versions of Spider-Man and one for Red X versus Terry McGinnis. So if you have any others, please let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.